Hey folks, first video I've done for a while, and honestly the beginning is going to be a bit of a rant, but then I'm going to try and like move on, slightly more constructive perhaps, sharing. Sorry, that's my washing machine in the background. I maybe should have just waited till it had ended, but I was just getting so wound up. So I saw this thing about how there's a certain part of the brain that gets activated when non-autistic people see other people. Like, it seems to be connected to socializing and quite deep, human things. It's called something like the fusiform facial area, something pretty cool like that. Anyway, there seems to be some evidence due to a study that when autistic people engage with our special interests, that's part of the brain that's getting activated. There's really kind of, important part of the brain. I mean, it's all important, I suppose, obviously, but anyway. And it was part of this article, this was being used in this article about how, well, maybe special interests, maybe they're actually quite good for autistic people. Fantastically patronising, kind of, oh, we've always called these restricted interests because from our perspective, they seem to restrict autistic people. And instead of actually talking to any autistic people about how they feel about their special interests, no, we're going to stuck a bunch of autistic kids in an MRI machine and scan their brains. So yes, I was getting quite upset about that and a bit increasingly frustrated by the kind of the lack of engagement with autistic people when it comes to discussing these things, the patronising, oh, it turns out, turns out that actually when you let people engage with things that bring them comfort and joy in a hard world, it helps their well-being. Who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thunk that also applies to autistic people, eh? And so yeah, I was getting pretty riled up about this, and I've been getting pretty wound up this month about anti-vaxx stuff, basically. Like, I mean, quite aside from, all the scientific misinformation, all the, flat out lies that get told about vaccines, it just, honestly, really, really hurts my fucking feelings. It actually genuinely is so upsetting that there are people out there in the world who would rather their kids be at risk of dying from a deadly disease than risk them being like me. And I know that there are reasons for that. I know. And I try so hard to be understanding and patient and compassionate, because I know people aren't making these decisions in that way. It's not like somebody sat down and went, yeah, actually, I'd rather put my kid at risk of dying from a deadly disease than risk them being autistic. That is the decision they're making, but it's not conscious in that way. It's not like, they're sitting down to write a tick list of kid might die, kid might be autistic, pros and cons, But ultimately, that is the decision they're making. And I know it's because those of us who grew up and were vaccinated have never seen measles or mumps or rubella. Not really. Although I had rubella as a child. And I have, even with being vaccinated, I actually have a reduced immunity to it because of that. Couldn't go to my parents' wedding, incidentally, because my aunt was pregnant. And it might have harmed my cousin, sorry. Because my parents, did the responsible thing. Anyway, my point ultimately is that I find it really insulting and pretty fucking hurtful. I'm not gonna lie. And if I ever meet Andrew Wakefield, I'm going to punch him so fucking hard. Anyway, that was a slight aside, but just something I needed to get off my chest because, fuck you all so fucking hard. If you engage with this stuff, if you peddle this stuff, especially in the name of making money, you are scum. Anyway, back to the special interest thing. This is the point, hopefully, where the video gets a bit more cheerful and positive. As patronising and insulting as that study and article were, it did validate everything I'm trying to do with LRA and with what I'm doing here. Trying to encourage people to think of not just your special interests as just like a source of, you know, joy or comfort or pleasure or time passing or something that you just like need to engage with on like that bone deep level that we get. That actually we can, even if we want to, actually actively use our special interests to create well-being structures and routines and thoughts and concepts and supports and all of these things in our own lives. And that's a big part of what I want to encourage people to do, and even help you do if you want. I'm finding I have a bit of a talent for drawing things like affirmations or reminders or ideas out of people's special interests. I really enjoy it, and whether or not you would want me to do, you know, create some for you or help you create your own, you know, or you know, do it yourself, ideally, you know, create your own well-being. That'd be really cool. But obviously I'm more than happy to help. But yeah, like science, patronizing science, but science says it's really good for us. It affects our brains in the same way that being social matters to non-autistic people. And it really, it's such a hard thing to describe. The depth of satisfaction that you get from engaging with your special interests it's not the same as other hobbies or whatever. I have like a range of interests and hobbies and stuff. Some of them are just things I quite like to do, and some of them satisfy me in just such a, it's so hard to describe. I call it bone deep, but it's like, it's almost deeper than that. It's indescribable. And it's hard to describe how much of a bummer it can be when you realise that a special interest has stopped being special. Kind of sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes you can go through a bit of a grieving process for it. Especially if it was something that occupied a lot of your time and now you have that time to fill. But yeah, basically the point is that our special interests are really special in like the nicest meaning of that word. And try not to feel guilty for engaging with them. Try to remind yourself that this is a part of your autistic well-being, and if you want, we can build on that together, or I can give you some suggestions or whatever if you want. But ultimately these things are a huge part of our well-being already. And unless your special interest is like repeatedly hitting yourself with hammers or something that's like fairly obviously damaging, then just embrace them. Like, and you know, maybe part of the problem is that sometimes we can get too engrossed or too hyperfixated, and that can lead to things like not eating or missing bathroom cues and things like that. So it's okay to like set reminders and stuff. Hey, you need to eat. You probably haven't eaten in 2 hours because you've been focusing on this. Go grab a sandwich or whatever. Set an alarm to remind yourself to check in to see if you need the bathroom, or to even go and have a go if you need to, you know. It's not all of us can always tell, even at the best of times, what's going on with our internal messages and stuff. So, you know, just before you get stuck in, set a wee note on your phone or whatever to remind you to do the basics, or to look to the basics, and then get stuck right back in. Learn, create, enjoy, make what you're doing a sort of sanctuary for yourself almost, like, because yeah, turns out it really is good for us, and that's an awesome thing. And I hope that some of you might share some of your passions and special interests in the comments or whatever, or, you know, DM me if you want to info dump or whatever. I love hearing about the things that really get to you all in that way. It makes me so happy. So yes, I'm glad that I feel more cheerful now at the end of this video, and thank you for listening if you have, and take care and have a good weekend and live long and prosper.